Hello, everyone, and welcome to Revenge Blaze, the channel where we dive deep into real life stories of betrayal, family secrets, and the quiet power of walking away when you've been pushed too far. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. We have some incredible tales coming up, raw, emotional, and full of twists that will keep you hooked. Don't go anywhere because today's story is one you won't forget. Without keeping you waiting any longer, here is today's story. Identical Strangers, the Golden Child, and the Ghost. My name is Victoria Ramos. I'm 32 years old, and today, I run the rescue operations for the busiest station in the suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky. My twin sister and I have always looked exactly the same face, same build, same everything. But growing up, she was the golden child, and I was the ghost. She got the spotlight, the praise, the easy smiles from our parents. I got the leftovers, the quick, "That's nice," the forgotten birthdays, the sense that I was there but never really seen. 5 years ago, she told them a lie about me. One lie. It was enough. They believed her instantly. They cut me off, completely. Blocked numbers, returned letters, unopened, skipped every milestone. For half a decade, I wasn't part of that family anymore. I didn't exist to them. Then last month, she was in a high-speed crash on the interstate. Critical. Unstable. The kind of call that lights up every radio in the county. My crew rolled out. I was incident commander on scene. When the stretcher came out of the ambulance, I saw her face. My face pale under the lights, eyes closed, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breaths. And right behind her, pushing through the firefighters, were our parents. They hadn't seen me in years, hadn't heard my voice, hadn't known where I lived or what I did. Our mother froze first. Her hand flew to her mouth. Our father reached for her arm, steadying himself as much as her. They stared at my badge, at the helmet in my hand, at the woman giving orders over the radio. Recognition hit them hard enough that our mother's grip left marks on his sleeve. They looked at me like I was a stranger who somehow held their daughter's life in my hands. And in that moment, under the flashing red and blue with sirens still echoing and the smell of burnt rubber in the air, I realized the truth they'd ignored for so long was about to come crashing down on them. What I did next, what I said, what I refused, ended it for good. But if you've ever had your own family turn their back on you over someone else's words, if you've rebuilt your entire life only to have them show up when they finally needed you, hit that like button right now. Subscribe if you want to hear how this really played out. And drop your location and your local time in the comments below. I want to know who's out there listening tonight because stories like this don't stay quiet forever. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, to those quiet streets in the suburbs of Louisville where the cracks first started showing. Those suburbs outside Louisville were the kind of place where lawns stayed manicured and neighbors waved from porches, but inside our house, the attention always tilted one way. Taylor could turn any ordinary moment into a performance. At family dinners, she'd launch into stories about her day exaggerated just enough to make Dad chuckle, and Mom lean in with that bright, approving smile. "You're a natural," Dad would say, passing her the mashed potatoes first. Mom would nod along, eyes sparkling like Taylor had just invented storytelling. The table felt alive when she talked. I sat across from her, fork in hand, waiting for a turn that rarely came. I'd mention a test score or a project, and the response was polite but brief. "Good job, Vic," Dad might say, already turning back to Taylor's next anecdote. Mom would smile vaguely, then ask Taylor if she wanted seconds. It wasn't mean. It was just automatic. Like the conversation had a gravitational pull, and I was always just outside its orbit. School events made it clearer. Taylor joined every club that had a stage drama choir student council. Her name was on posters, her photo in the yearbook. Parents showed up early to get good seats. Dad adjusted his tie like he was going to a gala. Mom brought flowers. When Taylor took her bow, the clapping was thunderous. I'd watch from the side aisle, arms folded, telling myself it didn't matter. My victories were quieter. I won the regional science fair with a project on water filtration systems, practical, unglamorous, but first place. I carried the certificate home in my backpack. Mom saw it on the counter and said, "That's wonderful, honey." Then asked Taylor about her upcoming solo. Dad glanced over and grunted approval before flipping the channel. No flowers, no special dinner, just a certificate that ended up in a drawer. I started to notice the pattern. Taylor got the "that's my girl" hugs. I got the "keep it up" nods. She got the family scrapbook pages. I got the blank spots. One Christmas, Taylor unwrapped a new guitar she'd hinted at for weeks. Mom and Dad watched her strum the first chord like it was a concert. My gift was a set of textbooks I'd asked for. They said "smart choice," and moved on to Taylor's encore. It built up slowly, that quiet ache. Not dramatic outbursts, just a steady pressure behind my ribs. I learned to smile through it, to say "I'm fine" when anyone bothered to ask. But inside, I made a promise I would earn their attention the hard way. Not by being loud or charming, but by being undeniable. High school flew by in that rhythm. Taylor ruled the social scene, homecoming court, prom queen, contender, the girl everyone invited. I focused on grades and extracurriculars that built resumes. I landed a part-time job at the local community center teaching first aid classes to kids. The paycheck was small, but it felt solid. Mom asked once if it interfered with my studies. Dad never asked at all. Then came the scholarship letter my senior year. Full ride to the University of Louisville for emergency management. I opened it at the kitchen table, hands shaking. I slid it toward Dad. He read it, eyebrows lifting. For the first time in years, he looked at me, really looked, and said, "This is Big Vic." Mom hugged me tight, whispering how proud she was. Taylor stood in the doorway, arms crossed, smile fixed but thin. That was when I felt the shift. The spotlight had moved just a fraction, and Taylor noticed. Her eyes narrowed for a split second, calculation, not celebration. She recovered fast, congratulating me with a laugh that sounded a little forced. But I saw it. The first crack in her perfect world. Everything changed for real the summer I turned 22, when Taylor realized the stage lights were starting to point toward me. That summer heat hung heavy over Louisville like it was trying to press everyone into silence. I was riding high on the new role at the community center, coordinating drills, training volunteers, finally feeling like my work mattered beyond a paycheck stub. Taylor had been distant, her usual chatter dialed back to clipped texts and half smiles at family gatherings. I chalked it up to her own life getting busier. I should have known better. She came over on a Thursday evening, uninvited, phone clutched like a weapon. Mom was at the stove stirring sauce. Dad was in his recliner, remote in hand. Taylor didn't sit. She stood in the doorway and delivered the line she'd clearly practiced. "Victoria quit her job," she said, voice low but clear. "She told me she needed money from the family to start over somewhere else. Said she was embarrassed about failing and didn't want to face anyone. Then she cut us all off. Blocked numbers, ignored messages, vanished." Mom's spoon froze mid-stir. Dad muted the TV without looking away from Taylor. She held up her phone, scrolling through screenshots, conversations I'd supposedly sent her, timestamps, manipulated words, twisted to sound guilty. "Look," Taylor said, zooming in. She even admitted it here. They didn't zoom in. They didn't ask questions. Dad's face darkened. Mom's hand trembled as she set the spoon down. Taylor's performance was flawless, hurt in her eyes, voice breaking at just the right moment. The loyal, older twin who'd tried to help, but couldn't save me from myself. Dad stood up. "That's it," he asked, more to himself than anyone. Then he looked at Taylor. "Thank you for telling us." No call to me. No hesitation. Just belief, instant and absolute. The phone rang in my apartment an hour later. Dad's name on the screen. I answered, expecting small talk. Instead, "We know what you did. Borrowing money, disappearing, lying about it. Don't call this house again." His voice was flat, final. I started to speak. "It's not true. Look at the screenshots, I can explain." But he hung up. I called back immediately. Straight to voicemail. Mom the next morning, same. By the third day, both numbers blocked. I sent emails attachments with my new contract pay deposits, side-by-side comparisons showing the messages were altered. No response. I mailed a packet letter copies of everything, even a photo of me at the center with my team. 5 days later, it arrived back at my door, envelope marked "Return to Sender" in Mom's neat cursive. The same handwriting that used to sign my birthday cards, now closing the door. I stared at that envelope for a long time. The ink was still fresh. It felt like a signature on a death certificate for whatever was left of us. Shock hit first, cold, sharp, like stepping into freezing water, then anger, hot and fast. I paced my living room, replaying every time they'd taken her word over mine without a second thought. How easy it was for them to believe I would steal, lie, run. How little they thought of me. The anger faded into something heavier, numbness, the kind that makes your limbs feel distant, your thoughts slow. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch, phone in hand, staring at the blocked numbers. 14 calls in 5 days, 2 detailed emails, 1 returned letter. Aunt Deborah tried intervening, called. Dad explained what she'd heard from me. He told her to mind her own business. "She's chosen this path," he said. 5 days. That's how long it took to erase me. After the last call bounced, I set the phone down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt the weight settle in my chest and stay there. I stopped trying to reach them. Stopped checking for replies. Stopped waiting for the phone to ring with an apology that would never come. I turned off the notifications and started rebuilding from the ground up, alone, quiet, determined. The silence wasn't punishment anymore. It was space. The silence after those 5 days didn't break, it thickened. It became the background noise of my life, constant and low, like the hum of a refrigerator in an empty kitchen. I moved through it by filling every hour with purpose. The firefighter academy was relentless, dawn runs in the rain ladder drills until my shoulders screamed, nights studying codes and hydraulics while the rest of the world slept. I didn't talk much. I just worked. The instructors noticed. One shift commander pulled me aside after a live burn exercise and said, "You don't flinch." That's rare. I took it as the closest thing to praise I'd heard in years. I climbed fast, probationary, firefighter, engineer, lieutenant, captain. Each rank felt like another layer of armor. At the station, I found rhythm in the chaos, the klaxon cutting through sleep, the weight of turnout gear, the moment when a victim's hand finally gripped mine. Those seconds mattered more than any family dinner I'd ever missed. I became chief supervisor in under 5 years. The badge on my chest said I was in charge. For the first time, people looked to me for answers. Amber Graham became the anchor I didn't know I needed. She was already a veteran instructor when I met her, dry humor, steady hands, the kind of person who could talk you down from a ledge without ever raising her voice. We started as colleagues, then friends. Late-night debriefs turned into coffee runs, then long conversations in her truck after tough calls. When I finally told her the whole story over lukewarm takeout in a parking lot, she didn't offer platitudes. She just said, "They lost a hell of a daughter. Their mistake." Then she handed me half her sandwich and changed the subject. That simple act, sharing food, no judgment, did more for me than any apology ever could. Aunt Deborah kept the line alive in secret. Her calls came irregularly, always when I least expected them. "Just wanted to hear your voice," she'd say. She never asked why I didn't come home. She never pushed. She just listened, sent cards with short notes. "Thinking of you," and reminded me I still had one person who hadn't turned away. Those small envelopes arriving in the mail felt like proof I wasn't completely erased. Then Paul Edwards walked into my life. We met at a station fundraiser, him volunteering to help set up tents, me directing traffic. He was quiet, steady, with eyes that saw more than he said. Our first real conversation happened over spilled coffee at the end of the day. He listened while I talked about work, about the calls that stayed with you. When I finally mentioned the family halting guarded, he didn't flinch or try to fix it. He just nodded and said, "You built something they'll never understand." We married quietly 2 years later. Backyard 30 chairs. Amber beside me cracking jokes to keep me from overthinking. Paul's father walked me down the short aisle. I sent an invitation to the old address. It came back unopened, same familiar handwriting on the front. I didn't cry. I folded it and put it in a drawer with the others. Life found a new normal. Mornings with Paul making breakfast shifts that ended with cold beer on the porch, weekends hiking trails outside the city. The station was family in its own way. Loud, loyal, always there when the bell rang. I had stability, respect, a life I'd earned. But the scar never faded completely. It throbbed on quiet nights. Thanksgiving smells drifting from neighbors' houses, wedding photos on social media, empty chairs at holiday tables. I'd catch myself wondering if they ever regretted it. Then I'd close the thought like a door and keep walking. I thought I'd locked that door for good until one stormy night a few months ago proved me wrong. The rain hammered the interstate that night like it wanted to wash the whole world clean. Dispatch cut through the static at 11:47, single vehicle rollover mile marker 28-1, occupant critical. My crew was rolling before the words finished. I sat shotgun in the lead engine wipers, slapping uselessly against the deluge radio chatter, filling the cab with clipped urgency. We arrived to wreckage lit like a crime scene sedan on its roof wheels, spinning lazy circles, fuel leaking in dark ribbons across asphalt. The driver was trapped unresponsive. My team moved like we'd rehearsed it 1,000 times, struts, cutters, spreaders whining against metal. I stood at the side voice level over the headset, C collar on, roof off. Fuel leak contained. Move. Paramedics pried the door. I leaned in to check airway. The face under the mask hit me like a fist to the sternum. Taylor. Same eyes, same mouth, same bone structure, my reflection now, blood-streaked, swollen chest barely rising. For one frozen second, the rain stopped, the sirens faded, and all I could hear was my own pulse hammering in my ears. I forced it down. Patient female, mid-30s, severe head and torso trauma. Backboard ready. Extract now. Sirens swelled behind us. Two figures broke through the perimeter, our parents. Dad in a drenched jacket, Mom clutching her phone like it could pull her daughter back from the edge. They saw the stretcher emerging, saw the face. Mom's knees buckled. Dad caught her arm. Their eyes found me standing there in full gear, directing the team badge, catching the floodlights. Recognition slammed into them. Dad's face went gray. Mom's fingers dug into his sleeve so deep I saw the fabric bunch and knew it would leave bruises shaped like her fingertips. They stared at me, the daughter they'd discarded now, the one holding the line between Taylor living or dying on this rain-soaked shoulder. I didn't pause. I couldn't. Keep the line open. Air transport inbound. Let's get her out. We cut posts, peeled the roof, slid her free on the board. Vitals thready but present. I checked pupils, stabilized, the neck called for the chopper. My hands stayed steady, trained, mechanical. Inside, everything fractured. Anger surged, first white-hot, familiar. The same rage that had burned when the calls went unanswered, when letters came back unopened. How dare they appear now soaked and desperate after years of choosing silence? How dare she still wear my face while I carried the scars they helped carve? Then regret crept in, slow, unwelcome, like cold water seeping through cracks. This wasn't just the liar who'd stolen my family. This was the twin who'd once shared secrets under blankets, who'd laughed at the same dumb jokes until we couldn't breathe. For a fleeting moment, I saw her not as the golden child, but as the girl who'd been part of me before jealousy turned us into strangers. The ache was sharper than any blade I'd ever held. By the time the helicopter lifted off Rotor's slicing rain, the anger had hardened into something colder resolve, detached, irrevocable. I watched the lights vanish into the black sky, then turned to my team. Scene clear. Pack up. Dad and Mom remained at the tape line, drenched, motionless. Mom's lips trembled without sound. Dad's shoulders sagged under the weight of what he'd just witnessed. They looked diminished, smaller than memory, older than time. They looked like people who'd finally seen what they'd thrown away. I walked past them without a glance. No words. No pause. Just the rain drumming on my helmet and 6 years of silence roaring in my chest. When she stabilized enough for hospital transport, our parents stood in the hallway watching me through the glass doors, like I was a stranger who'd just pulled their daughter back from the brink. The hospital room was too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums. Taylor lay propped up, monitors beeping in slow rhythm, IV line snaking into her arm. Mom sat on one side of the bed, tissue crumpled in her fist. Dad stood at the window, back to us, shoulders rigid. I walked in without knocking, still in scrubs badge, catching the fluorescent light. They looked up. No greetings. Just the raw edge of 6 years staring back. Aunt Deborah arrived moments later. She carried an envelope not thick, but heavy with everything it held. She set it on the tray table like it was evidence in a trial. No preamble. She opened it, spread the papers out, printouts of every email I'd sent, attachments, time-stamped side-by-side comparisons of the messages Taylor had altered, my old contract pay stubs, proof that refused to stay buried. Mom reached for the top sheet first. Her fingers trembled. Dad didn't turn from the window. Deborah spoke without heat, only precision. These are the things Victoria sent you 6 years ago. Proof she never stole money. Proof she never ran. Proof she tried 14 calls, emails, a handwritten letter you returned unopened. Your handwriting on the envelope, Janet. I kept copies because I knew one day the truth would demand to be seen. Taylor's eyes flicked to the papers. Color left her face in a rush. She tried to sit straighter, winced from the incision. I was afraid. If she kept rising, they'd see me as less. I didn't want to be invisible. The words landed small and sharp, like glass breaking in slow motion. Mom made a sound, half sob, half choke. Tears spilled freely now, silent at first, then shaking her whole body. Dad stayed motionless, but his reflection in the glass showed his jaw clenching, eyes glistening. I stepped closer to the bed. My voice came out level, almost gentle in its clarity. You didn't just lie. You erased me. My wedding, Paul's father walked me down the aisle because mine chose not to come. My birthday's candles blown out alone, no card, no call. Holidays where I set a table for one and pretended it didn't hurt. You let them believe I was the problem, and they did, without question, without once picking up the phone to ask my side. Mom looked up, mascara streaking. We thought you hated us. We thought you'd left us. I tried to tell you. Every time. You chose her version instead. Dad turned then. Slowly. His voice was rough, cracked at the edges. We were wrong. 3 words. Simple. Devastating. They hung there like the last nail in a coffin lid. Taylor's eyes filled. I'm sorry, Vic. I was scared of losing everything. The apology felt thin, like paper held against fire. I looked at her, my twin, my mirror, the one person who should have known me best, and felt nothing but distance. The truth lay exposed between us, raw and irreversible. Mom's crying grew quieter, exhausted. Dad's hands hung loose at his sides. Aunt Deborah stood silent, witness to the wreckage. The room filled with what no one said. Regret too late, trust. 2 broken years, 2 wasted. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You almost lost her tonight. I did what I was trained to do. That's all this was. Mom reached out, hand hovering. Victoria, please, let us make it right. I met her eyes. right had expired years ago. The chance had come and gone with every unanswered call, every returned envelope. The truth was out. It cut deep, but it wasn't there to mend anything. I didn't stay long. I turned and walked out because I knew I had to end this once and for all. The weeks after that hospital room conversation unfolded like a slow unraveling. No dramatic confrontations, no public scenes, just the quiet erosion of what Taylor had spent years building. Aunt Deborah moved with purpose. She didn't broadcast the truth, she simply shared it where it mattered. Copies of the old emails, the altered screenshots, the returned letter with Mom's handwriting. They went to cousins, uncles, the family group chat that had once been full of Taylor's updates. The messages started small. "Did you see this?" Then they grew. "All those years she said Victoria cut us off." I repeated that story at Thanksgiving. The ripple spread without noise. Invitations to barbecues stopped arriving for Taylor. Holiday cards came without her name. Relatives who once asked about poor Taylor's sister now asked nothing. Her place at the center of the family circle shrank until it was gone. Mom and Dad felt the isolation most acutely. Family dinners dwindled to just the two of them. The table that used to seat 12 now held 2 plates. Thanksgiving arrived with empty chairs, no grandchildren to chase. No laughter to fill the silence. Christmas cards from cousins came addressed only to Michael and Janet. No mention of Taylor. No questions about her recovery. They were left with the house they'd filled with her stories now echoing with absence. They tried reaching out. Texts from new numbers. Voicemails left on an old line I'd silenced long ago. A letter from Mom slipped under my door one afternoon, her handwriting shaky, the envelope sealed with tape. I opened it just enough to see the first line, "We miss you every day." I folded it back, placed it in the drawer with the others, and closed it. Unread further. Unanswered. Taylor tried alone. She waited outside the station one evening, coat pulled tight against the chill. When I walked out, she stepped forward. "Vic, I just need to..." "No." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slow my step. She stood there as I drove away, smaller in the rear view. The second attempt was at the grocery store near my house. She appeared in the aisle basket, empty eyes, red-rimmed. "Please, one conversation." I looked at her, same face, same eyes, and felt nothing but distance. "There's nothing left to say." I turned to the shelves and kept shopping. Each refusal carried less weight. The anger that had once fueled me had long since burned away. What remained was emptiness, not the aching kind, but the clean kind that follows when poison finally leaves the body. I woke up without the old tightness in my chest. I laughed at Paul's dry jokes without the shadow of guilt. I looked at family photos on friends' walls and felt only quiet acceptance. The scar had faded to a faint line visible if you knew where to look, but no longer painful. Taylor's world continued to contract. Friends drifted. Work conversations turned polite but distant. The golden child aura dimmed until it was barely recognizable. She became someone people spoke of in past tense. Mom and Dad aged in the silence they had chosen. Photos Aunt Deborah sent showed deeper lines around their eyes, grayer hair postures that carried regret like an extra coat. They no longer asked about holidays. They no longer expected replies. I didn't celebrate their consequences. I didn't need to. What happened wasn't revenge. It was simply the natural result of choices made and never unmade. Trust once shattered doesn't glue back together. It leaves pieces too sharp to hold. In the quiet that followed, I understood something final. Freedom doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in the soft click of a door you finally stop waiting to open. Finally, after months of their attempts, I sent one last message. Not to explain, not to hurt, just to close. I sent the message on a Tuesday night when the house was quiet and the rain tapped gently on the roof. One sentence. No elaboration, no room for reply. You lost me years ago. Don't come looking for the sister you never had. I pressed send, set the phone face down, and walked away from it. No checking for dots, no waiting for a response that wouldn't change anything. The words weren't cruel, they were accurate. A clean cut across scar tissue that had healed wrong for too long. The station kept its rhythm. Calls rolled in at all hours, structure fires at dawn medicals, at dusk rescues that left your hands shaking afterward. I ran the team with calm that came from knowing exactly what mattered. Rookies asked questions. Veterans nodded approval. The work filled the hours and gave me something solid to hold on to lives, saved decisions made respect earned. Paul was there every shift-end coffee, waiting, no need to fill silence with words. We built a life that didn't bend to anyone else's expectations. Weekends on trails outside the city, evenings on the porch, with music low, plans for a future that stretched wide open. No shadows, no waiting. The old family faded like a photograph left in the sun. Aunt Deborah mentioned in passing that gatherings had changed. No one asked about Taylor anymore. Mom and Dad's attempts stopped after the message. No more unknown numbers. No more envelopes. The silence wasn't punishment. It was simply the space they'd created for themselves. Taylor's world contracted quietly. The golden glow dimmed until it was gone. People moved on. Invitations dried up. She became a story told in past tense, if told at all. I didn't track their regret. I didn't need to. What happened wasn't revenge, it was consequence. Choices have weight. Lies have cost. Trust once broken doesn't regrow like grass after winter. It leaves ground too hard for anything new to take root. I learned the hardest truth in the quiet years that followed. Blood doesn't guarantee family. It can give you people who share your features, your history, your name, but it doesn't force them to stand beside you. Truth catches up not with drama or thunder, but with the slow, inevitable arrival of facts no one can outrun. When it arrives, you don't owe a second chance. Forgiveness isn't a debt you pay to keep the peace. It's a choice you make when the other person has earned it. Most never do. You control the door. You decide who enters when and how far. Sometimes you leave it cracked for the right people. Sometimes you turn the lock and walk away. One evening, I stood on the porch of our house in the Louisville suburbs. The rain fell soft and steady, pooling on the steps, running in thin streams across the driveway. Paul was inside humming while he stirred something on the stove. The dog slept at my feet, chin on paws, breathing slow. I watched the water carry leaves away, watched the streetlights blur into soft halos. No headlights turned into the drive, no knock sounded at the door. The rain kept falling, washing the air, washing the night. For the first time in years, I stood there without the old tightness in my chest, without the reflex to glance at the road. I didn't wait for anyone, and that was enough. Thank you for listening to this story on Revenge Blaze. If it resonated with you, if it made you think about boundaries, trust, or the courage it takes to walk away, please leave a like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories that remind us we're not alone. See you in the next one. Take care.